I'm Ritesh, I'm a college friend of Shyam's. I've never done anything like this before, but I could not do this. I'm sorry if I stumbled. I had prepared a stream of consciousness outpouring that would probably be too long, so let's try and stick to the memories I wish to highlight. My first memory of Shyam was on a bright summer's day in September '94 when we went to Model Engineering College in Kochi. It was orientation day. I wasn't quite sure about my choice and very worried about being away from home. As we stumbled out of the principal's office, I was cowering behind my dad, and I saw him standing confidently beside us with that megawatt smile we all know so well. And well, I thought, well, here's someone who seems to know what he's doing. Can't be all bad, could it? I still remember on our first day in class, during introductions, as we'd said our names, where we'd finished school and where we came from. In that clear tone of his voice, he said that he'd finished school in KV Pattam, Trivandrum, and that he belonged to a town called Aranmula. He flashed a smile and asked, do you know, have you heard of the world-famous Aranmula Kannadi? He then proceeded to explain how it's a special mirror that's unlike most mirrors that are silvered on the rear and have secondary reflections. This one is made of a special alloy that only reflects, that has brilliant reflection, and the formula is only known to the metallurgists that make it. A huge info dump and an interesting introduction. That was Shyam. As college years went by, he had an impish sense of humor, never a mean bone in his body though. Always good-natured about everything. He'd laugh at jokes even when he was the butt of them. Never a mean word about anybody. After the first year, where I only knew of him in class, and we talked a few times, but I really got to know him well when I started rooming with him over the next few years. That was a seminal period in my life because I was really lonely and homesick, and to find a friend like Shyam at that point in my life was amazing. He was just so intellectually curious. He had great opinions on everything, very balanced in his views. We talked about a lot of stuff, the profound and the profane. We shared our love of movies, cricket, and we were especially avid armchair critics of foreign policy, politics, defense, subjects very close to Shyam's heart. During this time in the youth hostel when we roomed together, there was a time when I was racked with a terrible cough. This caring friend of mine took me over to a doctor, had me looked at, he diagnosed me with bronchitis. We came back, and he spoke to the hostel cooks to prepare a steamer with hot water that he brought up to me to relieve my symptoms. I also recall at this hostel, there used to be this wizened old little lady who used to clean out the dorm rooms. Anytime she stopped by our room, he'd ask her how she was, how she felt, how her family was. He'd take the broom from her and do the job for her. She affectionately called him her Shyam. And I was always amazed at the ease with which he made these deep and genuine personal connections, his deep curiosity about people, and his many kindnesses to everybody that he met. We graduated in due course, and as luck would have it, our orbits intersected in Wisconsin of all places. My idea for fun weekend used to be binging on movies. That was until Shyam started calling me on these amazing trips. And every trip was just something else. I don't know what research he did, when he did it. We just go along for the ride breathlessly. And we were always, not to say never disappointed, we were just blown away by what he'd bring. We once took a trip to Texas to meet a friend who was visiting as an exchange student. We drove all night for about 20 hours, picked him up, and then headed all the way to Big Bend National Park. It was 4 a.m. He let us sleep in the car for a while. He woke us up, and then we bounced out onto the hood. And as the sun rose over those scraggy peaks and the whole landscape turned red, it looked like we were on the surface of Mars. We just stared at that spellbound for a while. I'd never seen anything like that before. And the only reason I did was because he sought it out and shared it with us. If I thought that was a great trip, there was another trip we went on to the Grand Canyon where we had a huge hike all the way down. The climb downhill was great, but again, we caught the sunrise over the south rim. And if I thought the previous sunrise was something, this was something else. On our way up, as the sun got hotter, there were times we thought we couldn't make it. As much as we enjoyed watching the Colorado River gush through the gorge, there were warnings we'd ignored about not trying to do this whole thing in a day hike. But we shrugged at each other and we were young and foolish, what can we say? But on the way up, he paced us. He'd wait, he'd make sure we were all hydrated, take as many breaks as we needed. Gently but slowly, he coaxed us to the top. And about 10 hours later, when we stumbled into the parking lot, we felt like we really earned both that sunrise as well as that view of the Colorado River. Like it seemed so easy when we just headed downhill. There was a weekend when he called me to raft whitewater rapids up in the north in Wisconsin. I'd never done anything like that before. I never knew to swim, much less. But hey, Shyam's calling. It's got to be great, right? He had some work friends with him. They were in a different raft. I was on this one with him. A little along the while before we hit the rapids, he noticed that his friends had lost their oars and were drifting. The oars were a little further downstream. What does gallant Shyam do? He rows us to the side, parks us by a set of reeds, dives into the water with his clothes on, swims upstream, gets both their oars, gives it to them, sends them on their way. By the time he gets back to me, he's exhausted because he'd been doing all this upriver against a pretty strong current. He tried 3 times to get in and he couldn't. And he said, go on ahead without me, I'll just pull out over here. I think he saw my stricken face, frozen in fear. He made one last huge effort as I hauled him in. He had no gas left in the tank, so we didn't row anymore. We just hung on to the sides as the rapids took charge. And at the end of class 2, class 3, when we went over a 15-foot drop and the raft gave out from below us, we were giggling like kids. Another amazing moment that I never would have had he not called me. As time went on, our paths diverged. He left Wisconsin, I stayed. We both have found families, but we always stayed in touch with email. And it was interesting just going through all these emails he used to send me as I was going through them this past month. Unfailingly, they were always sent from his work ID in the dead of night. I figured at the end of a long day, that's probably the only time he got, and probably he was headed right back to work after that. But it was interesting to see the evolution in our positions in life, our thoughts on what mattered, what should be. And then my happiness knew no bounds when in 2008 we heard that he was coming back to Wisconsin with Charlotte. When our families met, that was the best thing ever. Our wonderful life partners were friends, our kids were friends, we went on many outings together. And life seemed perfect. I'd hoped that our kids would grow together, we'd be mates together, but that wasn't to be, and we had to move. We still stayed in sporadic touch. on WhatsApp and with occasional calls. We take into the ritual of calling each other on our birthdays at the very least, a checkpoint to see where we were at in our respective lives, what the year had brought, what we'd hoped, and then we'd always revisit memory lane and chuckle. The last time he spoke to me was at an intensely difficult personal time. I don't know how he knew I needed to hear it, a voice, but he did. And as always, it was so easy to talk to him. I was trying to be strong for my family, but I could always be myself with him. And I still remember how he told me, tough times don't last, this too shall pass. Over the next few months, as I discovered how deep the human spirit goes, what the strength of family means, I found things about myself I didn't know were true. I looked forward to sharing them with him the next time we spoke. I wish I hadn't waited for him to call. But rather than dwell on the wrenching pain of the loss that robbed us all, I think we should concentrate on the gift to us that Shyam's wonderful life and all the wonderful memories he left us with. As I look back over the 23-odd years that I knew him off and on, over all of my adult life, and look for what I learned from him, the lessons are many. His always positive attitude and sunny disposition, his always can-do spirit, his love of the moment and all that it brought, his rare humility despite all his many wonderful achievements as he scaled peaks both figurative and literal, his active and attentive listening, his kindness and compassion for everyone, his constancy and steadfastness, his generosity of which he gave his time to mentor, nurture others, and listen to them. The fact that he conclusively showed that success comes from sheer hard work and not ruthless ambition. And above all, that nice guys do not finish last. Yes, all of those lessons, very much so. But for me most personally, in being a good and true friend in every way that mattered, in every sense of the word, while embodying all these wonderful qualities, to the socially awkward, homesick kid years ago who needed a good friend and was immensely blessed in having Shyam be the one. In the past month, as we revisited memories with old meets, dredged them to see if there was anything we missed, one thing that struck me was how could someone be as open and forthright as Shyam was, so transparently clear, what you see was what you got, and yet have wildly varying recollections. Some people knew nothing of some aspects of his personality, while others knew something else. I thought about it some more, and I put it together recently. It went back to how he'd introduced himself that first day. Shyam was that special Ironwala mirror that he spoke of, so possessed of that rare and special alchemy that was his bright and shining spirit, that always reflected back to us the very best parts of ourselves, that he helped us to see and know clearly, no secondary reflections. Thank you, my good friend, from the very bottom of my heart, for everything you shared with us, gracing our lives with your light, for letting us walk alongside your path, if only for some part of the way, for showing us all that we couldn't see what we couldn't see and didn't know about ourselves, showing us a better way, and forever exalting our lives with your kindness, grace, and luminous spirit. All those wonderful memories and experiences are forever inextricably linked to him. All that we were, all that we could and will be, thanks to him. There are no words left, only boundless gratitude precious and wonderful memories, and everlasting love.